Most B2B SaaS websites have some variation of the following. Our product integrates with the tools you already use. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Because if you're a decision maker, you're probably not going to sit through a demo or bother with a free trial for a product that you know your team can't actually use. But for a lot of B2B SaaS companies, there's actually a second objection that often goes overlooked, even though it can be equally important to the technology integration question. And that question is, will my team actually use this? Hey, it's Andrew, and this is the very first episode of Copy Spotlight. The decision makers who you're trying to convert on your website or on your landing page know that asking their team to use a new tool is probably going to feel like they're herding cats. Anytime you ask people to adopt something new, try a new process, you're likely to be met with some resistance. And so if that happens to be on the mind of your decision makers while they're on your website or your landing page, you need to do something to assuage those concerns. So one example of an industry where this is a huge concern is the sales CRM industry. I have some data here that suggests that most companies that have an implemented CRM have user adoption rates that are below 90%. So that means that companies are spending thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars every year on software that people aren't actually using. So if their idea was they were going to buy this sales CRM, they were going to get all of this juicy data that they didn't have before, and it was going to lead to all of these money-making insights and so on and so forth, none of that's actually going to happen if people aren't entering the data. So companies waste all of this money, and they don't even get the benefits and the outcomes that they wanted in the first place. So it's a huge waste of money, and you really can't blame decision makers for being worried about end user adoption. If end user adoption is a big concern for the prospects landing on your website or your landing page, here is one way that you can assuage those fears and move your prospects one step closer to saying yes. Okay, this is a homepage I worked on for a sales SaaS company called Spodio. Our research was really clear that prospects were concerned about adding yet another tool to their tech stack. And the main reason wasn't even technology. It was that their salespeople wouldn't use it. Again, end user adoption. Prospects on sales calls would say things like, yeah, I'd love to have all of this great data that your product can help us capture, but if my team doesn't actually use it, I'm not going to get that data anyway, so why bother? So for that reason, we focused a lot of the homepage copy on how useful the product is for the end user. So in this case, that is the sales rep. But here's one other thing that we did to neutralize the end user adoption concern. I like to call this the end user wall of love. First, we used a crosshead to call out the end users using the term our prospects use, your reps. So it's important to use your prospects' language, not your own internal language here. Something else we did is the crosshead isn't really addressing the concern head on. We're not saying, are you worried about end user adoption? Don't be. It's not something like that where we could potentially induce the concern in people who don't already have it. So instead, we're just flipping it out inside out and making it a positive. Then we pulled in the best testimonials that we could find from end users on G2 Crowd. It would probably be great if we could have the photos of people and a little bit more fleshed out names and job titles and things like that to increase credibility, but this is the best that we could do with the information we had at the time. You'll also notice that everyone here is a end user. We don't have any C-levels here, no decision makers, it's all just end users. Here's another example I found on the Lattice homepage. They've done something really similar here. So Lattice is software that helps companies increase employee engagement and performance. It's another example of a product where the decision makers who might be considering purchasing the software are very concerned about whether or not their people are actually going to use it, because if their people don't use it, it doesn't work, big waste of money and effort. So they've done something really similar to what I showed you in the Spodio example. So they called out the end users by name. So in this case, If they're speaking to people ops teams, those teams, those people are probably thinking in terms of, will our employees adopt this? So they've used the term employees, which I think is appropriate here. And they've included testimonials from end users, but they've also added these tabs for different sized companies, which could be really useful if you have SMB, mid-market, and enterprise prospects. I also want to call out how at least one of their testimonials focuses on how easy the software is to use. If your prospects are concerned about end user adoption, you can bet that ease of use is also a high priority for them. Okay, here's how you can create your own end user wall of love. First, call out the end users in your crosshead. So not something like see what our customers are saying, but use the terms that your decision maker would use to describe their own end users. So if you could fill in the blank from your prospect's perspective, think of it like this. Will blank actually use this? So will my sales reps actually use this? Will my employees actually use this? Will my agency partners actually use this? Try to figure out what term your prospects are using to think of that audience and use the same term. Next, you want to include testimonials from end users that focus on the value that the end users themselves get out of it. Bonus points if you can include testimonials that point to how easy the software is to use. That's all for today. If you liked this video, please head on over to copyspotlight.com where you can get on my email list. I'm going to send you all of the videos that I'm creating for copyspotlight.com, and we're going to dive into all sorts of cool stuff like this, copywriting, conversion optimization, all that fun stuff that you can use in your daily work. Thanks.